Said that with us?
I have one at five.
Well, okay. And you faced it, that's good. All right, well, a couple of different things regarding the agenda before I ask for approval. We're going to move item number 18. Our legal counsel has to leave early, and the Alcester Community Center update information will be moved to just after number 6, not after number 5. And that's to make sure that Sam can get out of here in time, and also to allow Jeff Nahava to take off so he can go and take care of whatever he may need to as well. So.
And then the roll call vote.
And then there will be a roll call vote for tonight as well, rather than just all in favor. So I am asking for an approval of the agenda with those changes.
I'll make a motion the agenda be approved.
Second.
Okay, well,
That's okay.
we'll Marcus second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Melissa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Marcus?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Vickie?
Aye.
Darla?
Aye.
All yes. Motion passed. You get a chance to look at both minutes of August 3rd and August 17th meetings, excuse me. Assuming that you did, and assuming that you have an approval, I would welcome a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of August 3rd and August 17th. I'll second that.
Darla made a motion and Linda seconded that motion for those 2 minutes of August 3rd and August 17th. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Melissa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Marcus?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Vickie?
Aye.
And Darla?
Aye.
All yes, motion passed. We'll now accept public input. The only public input that I'm aware of came from Nathan Beeler, and that was in reference to Mitchell Street. I would say as far east as you can go on Mitchell Street. There's definite issues there that we need to address, and I assume that we'll have to have Lonnie involved in the discussion regarding the same. But at least it was mentioned in public input. So, any other public input? Hearing none, we will move on to number 6, and we have a guest this evening, Jeff Nahava, Alcester EMS / Haywarden EMS. And right now he's acting as Alcester EMS Director, right?
Yes, good evening. I just wanted to come and introduce myself, put a face to the name. I think I know most of you here. I know 3 or 4 of you. I've talked to Vickie on the phone, talked to Dan. I'll give you a little background. For about the last 6 months, I've been sort of working behind the scenes to help with the struggle over here with the Alcester ambulance. I've been full-time director in Haywarden since October 17. I've been on the Haywarden squad since 1983. I actually took my training at the Alcester nursing home as an EMT, so kind of coming full circle here a little bit. But and then approximately 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was approached by, in a roundabout way, I was approached by the ambulance to see if I could take over his director position over here, part-time basis, to help them get things back on their feet. I did accept it. I look forward to the challenge. We've got a good group here. You got a good dedicated group. We're starting to work closely with the fire department. There's quite a few guys we're getting through ad hoc training to drive. We went to a schedule. For the last year or so, whenever Alcester couldn't crew, then it sort of fell on Haywarden's shoulders, and we sort of got notified down the road. Well, that was happening probably, I would say you guys couldn't crew probably about 60% of the time. Now you guys are crewing 75 to 80% of the time with the schedule, and then I know when you guys aren't available, and then we're covering them. We're covering you guys then. So it's worked out real well. Obviously, the biggest challenge that the community of Alcester faces is recruitment. We hope to hold a class here in October. I know I've got 3 or 4 individuals that are interested in it. COVID-19 sort of put a little bit of a damper on some of the people wanting to volunteer, but I don't foresee it being a big problem. So we just move forward. Everything that happened yesterday was yesterday, and move forward. Like I said, we got a good attitude with the current squad members, building a good relationship with the fire department, which we need. So I guess I'll entertain any questions if you have any. Other than that, I just wanted to introduce myself and let you know sort of, what's going on. So, yes.
I do have a question. In our 2020 budget, when we made the budget, there was some talk of the Alcester EMS needing a piece of equipment, and we were going to pledge $1,000 to that piece of equipment.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the equipment was. I don't know if you.
I'll have to ask. I'll be honest with you, it's news to me.
Okay.
It hasn't been brought up yet, but actually next Monday night is only the second meeting that I'll have with the full squad since I took over. I'll ask the other squad members if they know what that piece of equipment they were looking at. I am working on, there is some COVID money out there. We've got some things that need to be replaced. I'd like to see you guys get a new power lift here for their ambulance. It makes it easier for the EMTs. I'm going to be working on some grants here in the next year for you. There are quite a few grants out there. It's quite a process, but I do a lot of the grant writing for Haywarden EMS and the Haywarden Fire. We just received a grant through FEMA for a new air compressor over there. I've got a company out of Georgia that I work with that helps write the grants, so I'll be looking at doing some grant writing for the EMS squads here. So, and also the fire department if they want help with that over here. So, but I'll ask them and I'll get back to you on that. I can't answer that right now, what the piece of equipment was for. So, all right.
Mr. Nohava, Vickie Larsen, there was a call on South Street. There was some lengthy time between dispatch and arrival and time on scene. It involves South Street, and there has been an issue, and I thought I had it resolved, but evidently it's not. The ambulance ended up at 2 different sites before they made it to the person. I am working with Google Maps to get that resolved, because it shouldn't take you 15 minutes to get to a site that's 5 minutes away.
Okay. Do you know when that call was, or?
Not offhand, I don't. It was toward the end of the week.
I know that there has been some issues in the past, and I am working with Sarah Beatty over there to correct some of those issues. She's the head dispatcher over there. I know that personally, I know when we come in, because we cover, when I say we, Haywarden covers 4 miles into South Dakota. Our district comes over to Rich Crowderville. Everybody knows his corner basically. Everything from there east is our district as far as Haywarden. I know we've had calls where we follow Google Map and they have sent us, well, one call that I can remember, we should have went north of Haywarden across the bridge. They sent us west of Haywarden across the bridge. So I am working with Sarah on some of those. I mean, I'd have to look at the call. I don't know which call. I'm not sure what call you're talking about.
It was.
There are. I know there's been some issues, and they are working on it. So.
The address was correct initially when they went to the 911 addressing. That when it was entered in, it was those 2. It's an east-west road. It's a gravel road along where the fairground is, and those were designated South Dakota Highway 11.
Oh, okay.
And I was on the ambulance at that time, and I thought, where are we going? Because the address was familiar, and I caught it before we got out of
Right.
town. But,
And we even have that issue in Hayward too. There's times, I mean, the Google map isn't 100%, but I know that they are working on it. So that's, like I said,
Okay.
without knowing the specific call, or when it was, like I said, I'm fresh into this, so I know.
like I
that
said, I
they're-
think it was Wednesday or Thursday of last week, if I
Right.
remember accurately. I have a shop on that same road, and but I wanted to make you aware of that,
Okay.
and I'm working with Google right now. There's a way you can change the addresses, but
All right.
Maybe at your next meeting, Jeff, you could even just let people know, what's the name of the street now, Vickie? What's it actually called?
it's South Street.
So South Street is actually south of First, and
Okay.
it's that gravel road that does go there by the fairgrounds. So if you want to just mention that during the meeting, that would at least let people know.
South of the fair.
So it was last
South.
Wednesday
Yeah,
night is
that's
when
what
you
I
were
said.
talking, so I can look up.
It's Wednesday or Thursday, because I wasn't sure whether they were paged to
I'll
the.
work with
Okay.
the police chief, and I'll get a hold of Sarah Beatty at dispatch, and we'll see what the problem was, so, all right?
Okay.
The only other thing I'd like to maybe make mention of in this public forum is the policy has changed regarding where a person is going should
Right.
an ambulance from.
Well, there's, some of the changes that have been made is Dr. Waddell from Hayward has taken over as the medical director for the ambulance. I can't even remember the doctor's name out of Sioux Falls, Travnicek, or, he was wanting to give it up, so Dr. Waddell was willing to take it over. Some of the problems that arise with the volunteer squad was, you guys are a 911 squad. I mean, you're here to serve emergencies. There was in the past, times where people were taking the Sioux Falls and things like that. Now everything goes to Hayward. Now there's some concern about insurance, and I've been working with insurance companies, and I actually spoke with a representative. I know that two of your big employers, Alcota and also the school, are on what they call Sanford. I can't remember the exact thing, but it's Sanford 1, or I'm not sure what it is. But that being said, if it is a true emergency, they will cover the ambulance trip to Hayward. Okay? I spoke with a representative from them. So I'm working diligently on the insurance part of it, but you got to understand, we have a hospital sitting 8 miles away. I've been doing this 38 years. I reviewed some of the run reports that people were taking in Sioux Falls. I wouldn't have felt comfortable taking some of these people to Sioux Falls and being a 38-year veteran. So that is one of the changes. The EMTs like it because you're looking at 45 minutes on a call versus 3 hours sometimes on a call, 2 to 3 hours. Everybody's sort of getting used to it now, and they really got used to it more when, as Hayward based, when we came over, we have to take them over there. We don't have a choice. So, I mean, everybody's getting acquainted to it. I'm working on it, this is a work in progress. Obviously, you didn't get into the situation you're in overnight. It's not going to change overnight.
Right.
But we're working. I'm working with the insurance companies, and I think we can come up with a solution. But rest assured, I spoke with somebody from Sanford, the insurance part, and she said, if true emergency, the ambulance ride over to Hayward will be covered. So
I know for a fact that employers appreciate 45 minutes.
I've talked to several employers here in town, that especially during the day. I mean, your day coverage is it's like every small town. And don't think you guys are unique to this situation. We struggled for a long time in Hayward with our day coverage. That's why we ended up hiring a full-time director. The difference between Alcester and Hayward last year, our call volume last year from July to July, we went on over 518 calls for service. And 200 and some of those were transfers. Okay, you guys average somewhere, Sarah told me you guys average somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 to 110 calls a year. Just makes it a lot easier. They can come over there in 45 minutes. I know the EMTs say, hey, this is so much nicer. We go over there, we drop the patient off, we can resupply over there. They're getting their supplies from Hayward now. The hospital, I've worked a deal out with them where you can buy the supplies one at a time instead of buying a caseload. Go over there, drop them off, come back, go back to their job. Most every employer doesn't have a problem with an emergency, somebody taking an hour to do that. It's when you start talking 2-3 hours on a transfer, Sioux Falls, it's hard to let your employees go. They've got a job to do, so.
I just wanted that mentioned in the
Yep,
public forum.
appreciate you mentioning that, so.
Yep.
Just to
Any
correct misinformation, I was on the ambulance. And we took the patients where they wanted to go. And most of the time, the true emergencies, we would either go Hawarden or we would go Canton.
Yeah.
And we only had one person that was coming out of local business because I covered it and most of the time in the daytime.
But
So
right now, a lot of your people are coming out of local business and they're also self-employed, so that's.
So, but like I said, and our ambulance was accused by your ambulance director at the time for abandoning a patient. I didn't appreciate that. And I know that's in the past, but it's
And I have
hard to
not-
get past that when that happens.
Well, I have nothing to do that, and like I said initially, there's a lot of things that happened yesterday. I have no control over that. There's a lot of things that happened between Hayward and Alcester, I had no control over that. That's gonna change, okay? Rest assured, that's gonna change. The relationship has gotten better. I don't know what was said, what wasn't said. I guarantee you, if I have something to say to somebody, whether it's the city council or whoever, I'm gonna come and tell you, okay? I'm not gonna do everything right, I'm human, but right now, I guess if you have a problem, you got an issue, I'm the person to call. And we're moving forward. I don't know what happened yesterday, but we're moving forward, and that's the attitude that everybody has. We got a fresh start, a new beginning, so we'll put the past behind us and move forward, so that's where we're at, all right?
And it does look like you have quite a number of people that are interested in becoming.
I've got approximately 5 or 6 people now between the fire department and other people that are interested in taking the class. We've got probably about 6 or 8 firemen that are, some of them have the driver's training. We're going to be putting the rest of them through in the next week or 2 so they can drive. So we've got some renewed interest. It's the nursing home has agreed. They've got taken 3 people on from there. One of them actually happens to be one of my officers. She works over here. She's running now over here. I got the paperwork in process for a couple of the RNs to run, because an RN can actually just sign off with the medical director and go through a little bit of training, but they can run on the squad. So we're getting there. I said it's going to take a little bit.
It's encouraging.
Yep, we'll get there. So,
Yep.
all righty.
Anybody have any other questions or concerns?
Thanks for your work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. So,
You bet. All right, we're going to move on to number 18 on the back page, Alcester Community Center, update of agreements. And I'll turn most of that over to Sam, and we'll,
So like I said in the informational email that I sent out today, when Pat and I reviewed minutes and the process going forward, the city didn't actually vote to spend the funds, which you need to do in order to move the process forward. You should have all received, I think, from Pat, the updated visions contract that removes mediation. And so what you would need to do tonight is to just vote to accept the negotiated price of $2.6 million and change, schedule of values, and then authorize the mayor to sign if you want to do that.
so near as I can tell, one of the 2 documents requires no signature by me. It's just simply signed by, what's his
That's the
name?
one that requires your signature.
Yeah, just signed by Kyle, principal architect. And, yep. That is actually document AIA document A133-219. Additions and deletions report 4. that document. And what they did was they removed the mediation as even a part of the documentation, so. Marcus and Melissa, were you aware of the two documents that we're talking about?
Yes, what was that in the email that was sent out?
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and one of them was actually signed already by that, I can't remember. Kyle Raff. And he's that architect, and that's basically their responsibility to sign off the change regarding the mediation. The other document is the one that is the agreement or the contract, if you will, regarding the cost and accepting that cost. And you're aware of the cost amount, right, Marcus and Melissa?
Yeah.
Okay. So, now, do we have any discussion regarding this valuation and basically just the agreement to allow me to sign this and go forward?
Yes, I do. This part came directly from these. It's an explanation, and I'm still uncomfortable with the contract. It leaves us vulnerable, and at $2.6 million, that's a lot of vulnerability. So I am not, I think we should take more time and know exactly what if we don't do something, or if we do something, if we change, what exactly it's going to cost us, what our responsibilities are. And like I said, you can see from my thing, from the marks that I made here, the places that I think that we're deficient on as far as understanding and vulnerability.
I'm thinking it's time to move on with this, and if we don't do it now, it might not get built. So I'll make a motion to accept the bid. Vision Construction Group, 2.628108 million. Schedule of values and proceed with the Alcester Community Center project.
I'll second.
Melissa seconded. So we've got a motion and a second to accept that bid, the schedule of values, and to proceed with the Alcester Community Center project. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. Melissa, how do you vote? That was an aye. Linda?
Aye.
Aye. Marcus?
Aye.
Aye. David?
Aye.
Aye. Vickie?
No.
Nay. And Darla?
Aye.
1 no, 5 yes. Motion has passed. I will sign the document after the meeting and turn it over to you, Pat, for- All right, that was number 18. So now we go back to number 7. Oh, can we, oh yeah, we're actually a little late for that. Public hearing. Excuse me for being late, but we have Tanya Miller here from Banner Associates. And Sarah?
Yeah.
Sarah, how do you pronounce your last name? Lum. From SECOG. And they're going to provide us some information regarding the wastewater facility plant upgrade.
There is a handout of the presentation available. I don't know if you all received one or if you want a copy. Pass it around.
Is that the same information we've gotten?
Yes, it's the same information that should have been emailed in your packet, and it's the same information for both in the audience that'll be up on the
Okay.
screen here.
So if we got it in the email form.
I got it in the email.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna stand right here. Is this all right if everybody can hear or see? Okay, I want to make sure. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tanya Miller with Banner Associates. I'm an engineer focusing in wastewater, and so we began a facility plan with the city. It's been about 1.5 years ago. Oh, two on the phone. Yes, speak towards the phone so they can hear me then. So we began this process about 1.5 years ago, looking at the wastewater system. And so the intent of tonight's public hearing is to go through that process, what was the need for the project, what's been gone through, the alternatives considered, and then the recommendation. And so first of all, the need for the project, what drove this was really two areas. One is the collection system. A significant portion of it was constructed in 1939, and it's old vitrified clay tile pipe and is aging. And so the city wanted to look at that and kind of get some costs prepared on what it would take to either preserve or replace that pipe going forward. And then the other driver was the most recent improvements project at the wastewater plant was completed about 20 years ago. And that's typically about how long the equipment life is for that type of processes and equipment. And so they wanted to look at what it was going to cost to begin to replace that equipment and get some numbers together.
Can I interrupt you one moment?
Interrupt any time with any questions.
Only for clarification, you refer to the collection system, and for those that may be watching this video, the collection system basically is the sewer lines underneath the streets, alleys that are responsible for taking the sewage to the plant, correct?
Yep. Each homeowner owns their pipe basically from their house out to the road. And then once you reach the pipes that are under the streets or in the alleyways in the road, that's the collection system that then conveys that wastewater from each individual residence or commercial building or industry to the city's wastewater treatment plant, which is located in the southwest corner of Alcester, for anybody that wouldn't know.
So then obviously, changing any of that would require digging up streets and then repairing streets to the point of perfection. Perfect streets, in theory.
In theory, I only laugh because with contractors, it never ever goes perfect. So, but ideally, yes, you would, yes. And I'll get into we looked into a couple alternatives for repairs to the collection system, and I'll go into those in just a little bit.
Okay.
So thank you, but honestly, if anybody does have any questions, please don't hesitate to interrupt, especially if I happen to use an acronym or something that is confusing, because once in a while we have those in each area we work in, and sometimes one slips out and you forget that not everyone knows what you're talking about. The other things driving the improvements at the wastewater plant were building repairs. Some of the roofs, as I'll show in a minute, are having, they're not leaking completely yet, but they're getting close where they need to be repaired, and then flooding concerns. And if I can just show two things in the pictures up here. The picture on the left side where you can see there's pumps on the lower portion and an electrical panel up on the wall. That's one area, that's the chlorine room. And it's a very corrosive environment. And when you put metal in that corrosive environment, it has limited lifespan. And so that equipment is really showing some pretty severe corrosion and wearing out. So that kind of is an example of that need. The picture down in the lower right is the morning after a significant rainfall. And the wastewater plant has had problems with flooding. You know, they are located in a great location from being able to convey flow from town to the wastewater plant because they're at the low spot in town. But because they're in the low spot in town too, they also see a lot of runoff coming towards that area. And so there's been times when there's excessive rainfalls and it's actually backed up so far that it's entered into the door of that building in the background and flooded a basement wet well structure and caused some damage. So what a facility plan is, it is a document required by the state, by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, to be completed when a city is looking at applying for funding assistance. And there's certain requirements in that report. First of all, it wants you to look at what are your current conditions, your current flows and your loads, the things that you're sending to the wastewater plants. It also wants you to project those flows and loads out 20 to 25 years from now to make sure that whatever is being considered or planned will be able to support the future population. It also includes an environmental report, and so that is something required by any state money, which is often money coming from the federal government. They want to make sure that if something is constructed using federal dollars, that it is not impacting in any way an endangered species or a historic property or anything of that nature. So that is also required. It also requires you to evaluate several alternatives. You can't look at just one solution. You need to look at a variety of options and put costs together for each of those so that they can be considered from a feasibility, cost, and other needs standpoint. The report then recommends an alternative and includes those estimates of costs in the report, as well as an implementation plan, so kind of the dates and the plan to be able to enact or to move forward with the recommended solution. So a couple things I want to point out here. We did do a population projection for Alcester, and we looked at historical building permits and the number of customers, along with some of the enrollment at the school. And two methods were used. The middle darker line in between that, that's the average of the two methods. And so that projects, well, this goes out to 2050. The actual facility plan went out to 2045. We projected a population increasing from 855 in 2020 out to 958 in 2045. And then when we looked at projections too for flows of wastewater and for loads, we looked at historical flow data, and we typically have to look at a year of high flow in case that higher flow year would occur again, so it's often during a wet year. And so the highest per capita average day flows that we saw were last year in 2020, which is not surprising as it was so wet. And they averaged about 121 gallons per person per day, which that is fairly typical, especially given a wet year like last year. Typical numbers are 100 gallons per person per day, but in an extreme wet year like this area saw last year, to have it up at 121 is not unusual. It seems like a lot when you think about if you're just a resident using water, but when you think about every time, so when you flush the toilet, take a shower, do laundry, wash the dishes, all of that goes into that. Plus, there's usually some inflow and infiltration too, where water is just seeping into the system at a few locations in the collection system, and it can't be avoided. Then we also look at not only what are the average day flows, but what are the peak day and peak week and peak month flows, because different portions of the plant have to be sized to handle those situations. For example, your lift stations or pumps, they have to be able to pump that peak day flow when it comes in and move it through the system. There's other portions of the plant where that water is held for quite a while, and so we only design it for a peak week situation or a peak month. So those are the peaking ratios for each of those areas, anywhere from a little under 2 to a little over, or almost up to 5 from peak month to peak day. Those are very typical for communities, and so nothing unusual, very typical numbers. And then last week we looked at things called BOD and TSS, and those are the acronyms that we use in wastewater. BOD is biological oxygen demand, and it's just how much oxygen the wastewater will require in order to break down the organics. And so the higher kind of, if you think about like, dairy farms or things like that that have a lot of milk production or industrial processes, they have quite high BODs. Residential BOD is quite a bit lower, but that's what we look at. The other thing is TSS, and that stands for total suspended solids, and if you think of that, that really is just how many solids there are present that would need to be settled out or removed. So, and we use typical loadings of 0.25 pounds per day for BOD per capita per day and 0.26 for TSS. So kind of putting all that together, the projection that we came up with looking at what the future plant would need to be sized for is an average day flow of a little over 100,000 gallons per day and a peak month flow of about 217,000 gallons per day, and then peak day of almost 600,000 gallons per day. So those are the projections used. Just to kind of summarize, I want to go from what projections we use now into the collection system. And so I would say a little over a third of Alcester's collection system is old 8 and 10-inch vitrified clay pipe that was constructed in 1939. And so that's the pipe that's probably the most concerning. It's approaching 80 years old. That pipe, typically, if it is exposed to too much oxygen, it can start to become brittle and crack. It's susceptible to roots, especially if the joint's getting in and breaking it up. And so it's often something that cities are trying to either replace or rehabilitate. Most of the remaining portion of the collection system was installed in the 60s and 70s. And then there's a few pieces that were installed more recently where the exact year isn't quite known and the material isn't quite known. But we can gain more information about that by televising the system, and that's one of the things that are recommended. They can put a camera down in the sewer pipes and run those cameras through the system, and then you can see what the pipe material is and what condition the pipes are to be able to recommend if there's repairs needed and what types of repairs are options. So this is a photo of the existing plant. And I'm gonna go over there and talk really loud for just a second for those on the phone. Just to kind of show you how this works, the wastewater comes in over on the east side into a manhole and flows over to approximately this location. Typically, it'll run into the aerated basin, which is this kind of oval-shaped structure right here where air is added to the wastewater and it breaks down that BOD. During high flow situations, there's a lift station here where the flow can be diverted over to an kind of an overflow tank or an aerated, what was that?
Equalization.
Equalization tank, where it's aerated and held. And so if that's not needed, it just sits empty basically. It is available for those high peak flow situations. But on a typical day, the wastewater will flow into that aeration basin and then over to a lift station that's in the basement of this operations area. This is where the water has come down this hill during high flow events and run into that operations room where the electrical panels are located. It's flooded that room, creating a dangerous situation for operators, and then it's also flooded the pump room below. After the wastewater leaves this area, it flows over to these two circular structures called final clarifiers, where it's a kind of a big quiescent tank where the wastewater can settle, the solids will settle out, and then the clear liquid decants off the top and flows over to the chlorine contact basin, where chlorine is added, and it flows through that contact basin and then is pumped out to the river. And then any solids from the process are pumped out to sludge drying beds a couple miles outside of town. So we went through the whole plant, and I won't read everything on each of these slides off to everybody. I'm just going to summarize briefly. The equalization basin and the lift station really are in fairly good condition. It's just there's some components of that lift station that need repair. The wet well needs to be lined and some pumps need to be added. The influent flow measurement and screening, so that picture on the right is basically a photo of the wastewater coming into that oval-shaped aeration basin, and there's a screen in there that is raked every day and the solids accumulate. And that screen is very difficult to access, and the solids aren't washed and compacted, so they can't be landfilled as easily. So that's an area where some repairs can be completed in the future as well. The aeration basin, there's a photo of it off on the left there. With that aeration basin, there's no redundancy, and what's meant by that is if the city ever needs to take that basin down, basically drain it so they can access the aeration equipment on the bottom, they can't do that easily. And they risk kind of losing all the bacteria in the plant if they do it. So that's a concern. It's also undersized, and that's a concern as well. And then the roof is in need of replacement on that building, as well as mechanical electrical equipment needs to be replaced. It's aging. The intermediate wet well adjacent to that pumps wastewater to the next process, those pumps are in poor condition, and that's where the area is very susceptible to flooding. So that's a concern. And then the operations building too being susceptible for flooding. With the amount of electrical equipment in there, it's a dangerous situation. So in the middle kind of there is a picture of the roof, and the roof is aging and needs repair. You can see kind of the cracking or deterioration that's going on. And then the other item, the final clarifiers, the next main area the wastewater flows through. The final clarifiers are really in good condition, and they have sufficient capacity for the future. There's a few minor grading issues around the building that could be easily taken care of to avoid some of the runoff that's currently entering the lower portion of that building. You can see pooled in that picture there on the right, but otherwise they're in very good condition. The disinfection, I mentioned that earlier, that disinfection chamber, the equipment's wearing out just with the corrosive nature of that room, and a lot of the equipment's reached the end of its useful life, including the heating and ventilation system. So a new disinfection equipment is needed. And then the effluent lift station, that as well, given its age, is in good condition. And so really there's no concerns with that. The site stormwater piping though is undersized. And so that's something that should be looked at to try to be able to capture more of that runoff and divert it before it can enter the operations building. So when we look at alternatives, I'm going to first talk about the collection system, and then I'll come back to the treatment portion. On the collection side, we looked at two alternatives. The first alternative was doing open cut construction, was doing cured in place pipe rehabilitation. And what that is you basically take a fabric sock or a fabric tube, however you want to think about it, and they inject it with a resin, like an epoxy resin, and they pull that through the pipe. And as it hardens, they inject air into it to expand it, to allow it to harden, and basically use the existing pipe as a form. So you're essentially getting a brand new pipe inside the existing pipe that is the same structural integrity as the existing pipe. It's often much cheaper alternative because you don't have to replace the asphalt above. And it's a good option for areas that are either very difficult to access. You know, I think a great example is like underneath a major highway or a railroad, or areas where your asphalt's in good condition.
How thick is that after it's cured?
It varies depending on the pipe size. So I would say it's actually very similar or slightly thinner than the existing pipe. So like, I mean, for like an 8-inch PVC or an 8-inch pipe you're replacing, it's probably about that thick.
Half inch, give or take?
Yeah, I'd say 3/8 to a ½ inch thick. So if you get into larger diameter pipe, obviously to maintain that structural integrity, it gets thicker.
Sure.
So the other option we looked at is open cut construction, and that's literally what it sounds like. You just basically dig a hole. I'm sure many of you over the years have seen street projects. You're digging a hole, digging up that old sewer pipe and replacing it. And as part of that, you are replacing what the state will allow for funding. They don't allow you to replace the whole street. They'll usually pay for either a third or half of the street, depending on how many utilities, water, sewer, storm are in the street. So for Alcester, it'd be about half the street that they would cover the cost for. So we looked at 2 of those options, and we've broken the collection system up into 2 phases, and I'll show you the 2 phases in a second. Addressing the areas with the most age first, that have the most need. And because there is a need to also replace the asphalt streets in those areas, we did recommend open cut. It had a higher cost. It was $1.643 million compared to $1.511 million. And that's because really for the price, if the street needs to be replaced anyway, it is a lower cost alternative, even though the cost is higher. If you came back with CIPP and did the street later, it'd be more expensive. I can mention too, we're not, at some point in the future, if the city wanted to do additional work, we've got another about $2.5 to $2.9 million of improvements that we've prepared costs for, but those are not needed at this time, so they're not part of the funding request. So it would be the pipes that are in orange, or kind of a reddish orange on that map, that are part of the first phase. Those are the oldest pipes. Those are the 1939 ones. Some of them, the street furthest to the west, Olstad Street, has been televised and does show some significant deterioration. The remaining portion of the pipe is shown in yellow. Those are the ones that would be part of a phase 2 improvements. And it's quite likely that that cost will come down, that not all those lines would need to be replaced or rehabilitated. We just don't have any information on them. There's no televising information to be able to tell what condition they're in. So part of the first phase improvements includes televising the entire town, so the city has a better handle of what condition are the pipes in and what is a realistic number for that second phase of what the need would be. So for the treatment side, we looked at 4 different alternatives. One is a do nothing, and I bring that up because the DNR always requires that you look at doing nothing and what is the impact of that. Obviously for Alcester, that's going to be that equipment will tend to will continue to deteriorate, and eventually the city may have difficulty meeting permit limits and have violations. So that's not a good alternative. The other 3 alternatives that we looked at was expanding that existing aeration basin and replacing equipment that's either outdated or wearing out. And so that would be adding that oval tank, adding a second oval tank to provide the capacity needed for the future growth. And that second tank also allows the staff to be able to drain that basin and replace equipment when necessary. The other alternatives that were looked at was conversion to a conventional activated sludge with addition of primary clarifiers. And I get really excited about wastewater treatment, but I'll try to keep this really basic and simple. So what happens is you are always recycling bacteria from those final clarifiers up to the aeration basins, and you're essentially just kind of providing more food for them to eat when you bring them back up to the aeration basins. if you have primary clarifiers, you have more sludge to waste, and you're essentially, I mean, in layman's terms, it's a lot easier to move the bacteria around and give them lots of food and keep them happy. Without primary clarifiers, you have an extended aeration basin, which means you just have to hold solids longer to achieve your treatment. And when we looked at that, that'd basically be, we would have to add another aeration basin, and then essentially, instead of final clarifiers, you'd have 2 of the circular basins ahead. So adding 3 tanks is just too costly. It doesn't make sense. So that alternative was not recommended. And then the fourth alternative we looked at was stabilization ponds. And so that would be abandoning the existing wastewater plants and constructing stabilization ponds somewhere outside of town. For discussion purposes, we have it shown out by the sludge drying beds because you already own land out there, but it is in no way saying that's where they would have to go. And the idea there is that it would be a simpler treatment process and easier to operate. The challenge with that is your permit limits require ammonia removal, and ponds are not very good at providing ammonia removal. That water needs to be held for over 270 days to get ammonia removal, and it still may not be able to get down to the limits that you would have to go down to if you went to a twice-a-year discharge in talking with the state. And so additional equipment would have to be added. You would essentially have to add an aeration basin in a rock bed out of those stabilization ponds. And so it's kind of like having the aeration basin you have here, just having something similar out there. And so when you look at constructing that along with constructing the ponds, it becomes quite cost prohibitive, and I'll provide more information on that in a second. So this is just a graphic showing, you can walk over here again, just showing the improvements. This would be the additional aeration basin with the phase 1 improvements. We would take and relocate that operations area and all the electrical equipment out of kind of this hazardous flood area and move it up on this hill into an existing garage building and renovate that so the electrical equipment could be stored here. It'd be a lot safer for operations. The other thing we have proposed then is improvements to this disinfection system. And so we would add a UV disinfection, which would use a lot less chemical and be a lot more economical for the city over the long run. All right. And then the phase 2 improvements. These phase 2 improvements would be needed sometime when permits limits got more tight and required nitrogen and phosphorus removal. It shows a pretreatment building off to the east there, or off to the right side, and then an additional, phosphorus building to be able to add chemicals for phosphorus removal there in the lower left. DNR's been telling us this is 5 to 10 years out, just if anybody has questions on timeline of when it would be required. And then the other option I just wanted to illustrate, I think a visual is very helpful with those stabilization ponds on how much area would be required. So right now the city owns, I'm just going to do it this way instead of running back and forth. The city owns this piece of land. That's not going to show up. The city owns this piece of land right here and is currently using it for sludge drying beds. And so if ponds were constructed, again, just for graphical purposes, not the actual land that we propose, we would need 2 primary cells, approximately 5 to 6 acres each, and then a secondary pond. And then this we have shown as a sager, and that's essentially an aerated rock bed that would provide additional treatment, and about how big it would need to be. So putting this together in cost, the costs we prepared were for alternative 2, the treatment plant expansion, and alternative 4, the stabilization ponds with the nutrient removal. And so for the first phase, the cost for improvements to the existing wastewater treatment plant is about $3.7 million. If stabilization ponds were constructed with that nutrient removal aerated rock bed, it would be about $8.6 million. So it's quite a bit more expensive. And then when you add the phase 2 improvements, which would be needed at some point in the future, the total cost comparison between the two is you're comparing about $6.1 million for alternative 2 to about $10 million for alternative 4.
And just for the sake of argument, that 3.7 million includes, for all practical purposes, 1/2 new streets for Ofsted, for Union, and I believe Broad.
This is the, yes and no. This is just the wastewater treatment costs.
Oh,
So when I get to the next one and it's got the phase one cost, that does include half a new street for
Gotcha.
those,
Okay.
yes.
On this, can we, oh, I just lost it. Reuse water. Can we reuse, by treating it this way, can we reuse the water for certain uses? Would it be clean enough to do that?
It would not, I mean, you cannot reuse it for drinking water, it's not
No,
that
no,
clean.
no.
You could pass, just what I'm, like.
No, no,
very
I'm aware of
clear
that. I was
Um,
looking at Trojan in the UV, five reasons why we used UV.
Yep.
Is because you can reuse the water, and if we're treating it, if we can take that one step so that we can reuse it in other applications.
You can sometimes use it for irrigation purposes.
Okay.
That's where I've seen it done before. You'd want to, if that was the city's intent, I would want to coordinate with the DNR though and find out if they would put any other restrictions in the discharge permit.
Okay.
So just let me know if that's something that you'd want to look into. And that's something we could look into it, preliminary design even too.
So the cost of the stabilization pond system, is that gonna be a lot simpler and more cost effective in the long term to run?
You would think so, but no.
No.
And the reason is, I mean, yeah, in common sense goes, it's way easier to operate. You still have to disinfect, so you don't save any chemical or power costs on that end. And the other challenging part is because you have to put air into that bed of rocks, just like you're putting air into your aeration basin. Bacteria, they need 1.25 pounds of air for every pound of BOD they're gonna break down. And it doesn't matter if it's at the plant or if it's out of that bed of rocks. They need the same amount of oxygen. And so basically it's the power needed to provide the air that is the most costly for the operations.
Okay.
There is some operational savings just as far as like, staff time and complexity and mostly parts and equipment, yes. But the other challenge is that you're also having to pump the entire town's flow now out to that site or out to wherever it's gonna go, and so there's power cost there that's on top of it. So you save, if you look at the annual operations cost, it's a little bit cheaper for the stabilization pond option, but it's not enough over the 20 years to make it where it, is much cheaper and should be pursued. It still is more expensive.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
Tanya,
yeah.
in 20 years, if we have to go down this path again, though, what would the cost be to update the stabilization ponds versus the planting?
So we look at a 20-year period. We don't go beyond that.
Right.
So the tough part about that is, yeah, you'll probably still have some clarifier equipment that would have to be replaced and some things like that that'll continue to fail. But if you go out to that aeration, or out to that aerated bed of rocks, those blowers are still gonna fail. And that electrical equipment is still gonna fail. So I think the cost difference was still far enough apart. I'm wondering, I'm gonna jump ahead. I just wanna see if I have a slide on that. Yeah, I don't have a slide with me on it. It is in the report. There's a table. It won't take me long to find it. It's table 6.4. Or no, 6.6. So when you look at table 6.6, so the annual O&M cost that we looked at for the aeration basin expansion was $71,000 a year. For the stabilization ponds, it was $67,000 a year. So it was only about a $4,000 savings. But the difference is when you factor in the capital cost with the loan, the equivalent uniform annual cost to expand the plant that you have is about $348,000 a year, because that includes the loan and the O&M. And that's both the phase 1 and phase 2, so that's with the second phase of addressing phosphorus removal. With the stabilization pond, which is 10 million, and then with the O&M, it's 523. So, it's over 150,000 a year apart, and that's where it's just so far apart.
Is there the possibility of using part of our existing plant to feed out to the stabilization pond? I mean, are we removing ammonia right now?
Yeah, you're removing some ammonia right now. Yes, that could be feasible, but it's what the challenge and why that doesn't make as much sense to do is because in the second phase, when you have to do nitrogen and phosphorus removal, you need to go from an you need to give that bacteria air, and then you have to starve it of air in an anoxic cycle. And so be able to give it air and get it out there, and then somehow starve it. And you have to be able to recycle back and forth between the two very easily. And so to have those two processes that far apart, it just won't be feasible from the bacteriological side. And if you want to look at that table.
Well, that's, I got access to it.
Yep. So. All right. So I don't know if Sarah, you want to jump in here. This gets into more the funding part.
Yeah, and I actually have to do a prepared, thing, so I mean, I can talk about, I can do this, and then if there's questions about the funding, or.
Why don't, maybe that, because I don't want to say things twice, and a lot of what you're going to say is right what's up on this
Yeah,
slide.
that sounds good. I don't have a big voice, so I'm just gonna take my mask off for a minute. So there's two, actually, funding sources that are available, to the city of Alcester for this project. One, of course, is Tanya's, I'm sure, been working with you guys on, is the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, DENR, and then also through CDBG, a Community Development Block Grant, which is administered by the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And that's a pot of funds that not every community qualifies for, but Alcester does because you have 51.25% of your population of low to moderate income. And to qualify, you have to have 51%. So you just qualified this past year. So that's good for you. So I have two kind of scripts that I need to go through for the public hearing, and we'll submit these with the funding applications. The first we'll go through is the Community Development Block Grant information. And just so you know, you might hear me talk about some housing stuff. And the reason that is because the funding is, the federal funds come from HUD. And so in a lot of places, it's directly to housing, but in smaller communities, it's often put towards infrastructure. And that's how South Dakota chooses often to put their funds towards infrastructure. So the city of Alcester is submitting an application for funding to help finance phase one of its wastewater system improvements project. The total cost of the project is approximately $5.5 million. The city of Alcester is submitting an application to GOED, which is the Governor's Office of Economic Development, for grant funding through the Community Development Block Grant. The request to GOED is $770,000. These funds are provided as a grant, and there is no required payback of the funds. The CDBG program works to ensure decent, affordable housing, to provide services to the most vulnerable in our communities, and to create jobs through the expansion and retention of businesses. CDBG is an important tool for helping local governments tackle serious challenges facing our communities. The city of Alcester meets one of the criteria for eligibility in that 51.25% of its residents have been determined low and moderate income by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the U.S. Census Bureau. This means that the activities funded through this proposal will benefit 51.25% low and moderate income households, which is criteria to receive this funding. CDBG funding also requires the opportunity for the citizens of the community to engage and participate in the planning and implementation of CDBG funded activity in their community. We know that the wastewater improvement project is a priority for the city and its residents. However, you are encouraged to identify other priorities in your community. This is your moment to let us know what you feel is important for your community. Needs already identified. So sometimes I will assist by looking at your comprehensive plan. So I've made a list of some items, but anyone is welcome to add others, and that will go on record in the public hearing. So, a couple of items: community development and housing needs of low and moderate income persons. So in your comprehensive plan, it says to design lots and blocks to emphasize cost efficiency and community value. Discourage scattered residential, commercial, or industrial development. Provide suitable areas for a variety of residential types and densities. Other community development and housing needs, which I pulled from your comprehensive plan. Enhance the character, identity, and historic preservation of the community. Improve public services and buildings such as the Alcester Community Center, which it sounds like you're working on. Existing streets and existing water and sewer facilities. Participation in the pre-disaster mitigation plan process to identify possible activities to mitigate the loss of life and property in the event of a disaster. And we write those at SECOG, so I know you guys have participated in that. Improve park and recreation opportunities for citizens. Maintain the appearance of Alcester's neighborhood streets and commercial districts. And then at the bottom, a list plan or potential activities, planned or potential activities to address housing and community needs. So wastewater system improvements, which you're working on. I'll move the community center down since I now know that you guys are working on that actively. And then update and or revise the city's comprehensive plan. I don't know how long ago you guys did that, but that's kind of a ongoing thing sometimes.
It's valid till 2030.
Oh, okay, so you're good for a while. So maybe I'll take that piece off. But if there's anything else anyone wants to add to that list, now is your chance. Or any comments?
Part of the consideration is the centralization of how far we have to pump or we have to flow for the sewage and stuff. And we don't want to add any more piping than necessary. So it would be, I would think it would be advantageous to repair and build the site where it's at, so that we don't have to add any more piping or decentralize some of the factors.
Existing footprint, is that kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we had at one time, and this has been 20 years ago, we did have a beef kill or processing, and that was causing a problem with our mechanical system. It was overrunning it, but that no longer exists in our current manufacturing. We don't have, I don't think, we don't have the intrusion of high doses of sewage. So that's one advantage, and I wouldn't expect to see a processing plant. We could, but I guess I don't see that down the road. I think we're going to see more industrialized, not a bio-based kind of thing.
So that kind of expansion isn't a concern.
And I can mention too, we did factor in the cost of having to basically convey the pumps and the piping out to a stabilization pond site, and then you'd have to also have a discharge pipe, which would gravity flow it back to the creek. And those two costs do contribute to that alternative being so costly.
And I know DE&R had been originally concerned with this is environment species shiners. That was one of their concerns 20 years ago and stuff. And with the UV, what I'm reading about that part of it, that it's more generous environmentally. And we want to pass on to our kids, in a stable environment anytime we can and stuff. So
Sarah, you mentioned that, we have a number of different concerns that we should be aware of and have on our plan. I think you mentioned replacement of streets or repair of streets. And of course, this is where, I mean, I don't like the idea of talking about millions of dollars of expense. I don't like that. However, if we're going to spend millions of dollars on our streets anyway, in order to get our streets to where we want our streets to be, why not fix the infrastructure under the street at the same time?
Exactly, and I think that's partly why I pulled that one out of your comprehensive plan, because the more that you can combine projects, the better. And CDBG likes to see that. If you're, they don't want to put their money towards surface improvements.
Sure.
They want to put it towards sewer, water at the same time. So, I mean, you can go to DOT for funding for just road projects, but CDBG wants to see that you're doing projects that are combining multiple needs.
They want the bones instead of cosmetic.
Exactly. Yep.
This is actually a public hearing, and I wish there was more of the public here to be able to hear just exactly what we're talking about, because this is a consideration that a lot of people have had for quite a long time regarding the streets, and it doesn't make sense for us to put a lot of work into the streets if we're not going to fix what's under them. So I think that that's a very important thing for our community to hear. I wish there was a way that we could do that, and I know that it will be in the paper. I know that it will be in the minutes, but I'm wondering if we should enlist maybe some information from either of you or both of you and put that in the paper specifically for the reason of letting the public know.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think I will typically provide the notes that I went through to the finance officer, so I'll give Pat that information for the meeting minutes if you would like to publish that specifically. But I know what I went through is not super exciting material to read.
Well, but I think they need to hear it. I think they need to, realize that we can't just, put $1 million into streets and then say, okay, everything's fine, because guess what's under there? It's not fine. So, okay.
So I have one. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Where does our storm drain water go?
That, we did not look at in a study. I'm gonna reach out to Dale. I think quite a bit of it flows just over the streets. As far as stormwater piping, there's not much, is there?
Most of it ends up right down by the elevator, it's underground.
2nd Street, I'm sorry, South Street.
The creek down
The
there,
creek,
right?
yeah, it comes, Lee and those come down and they go through a tube and then they come down a little natural stream that goes into Bruley Creek, and it runs along South Street, just on the south side of the bridge.
Is that anything, Dale or Lonnie, that would need to be upgraded when we tear up some of these streets? Or is that system working fine?
We had discussed putting more storm drains in as we do streets, so that we don't have complete surface runoff.
The inlets?
Yeah, because a lot of our streets get ruined because of it. We get water infiltration under the road too easy, and it'd be better if we could put it underground to get rid of it.
An actual storm sewer
System.
still going to the same place.
Is that something that could be added when we're redoing some of these streets, that the storms, the drain system be upgraded too?
That's a question for
Yep, it can be added during design. If you want to, it's going to increase the project costs. Because right now, we only have half the street in this portion of the project. We don't have the other half. And so what we'd want to do is, as part of the preliminary design, is put together a cost estimate for the full street replacement, so you can see that and make sure you can secure funding. And then we could look at the cost to add storm piping, or some sort of stormwater system into that, and then see if that's something that you want to add at that time.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we've had an engineer here that has discussed a multi-million-dollar street project that did include storm sewer I guess, embellishment, for lack of a better word.
For sure, that topic dealt with curb and gutter. I don't know that we talked a lot about the storm sewer at that.
We were talking about it.
Okay.
A little bit of both. I mean, so I guess my point is, then you couple that project with the sewer or sanitary sewer project. Now all of a sudden you've replaced the entire street. And of course, we're talking about a lot more money, but hopefully we're talking about a lot more help too, to pay for it. Because we're gonna need a lot of help to pay for it.
But really, we're not talking about a lot of streets.
Not for this first.
Hofstad,
No.
Hofstad and First Street are the only actual streets that we're dealing with in phase one.
Yes.
Everything else in phase one is an alley.
Alley. And if you want, and if you, that's where if you want to apply for grant funding for the stormwater portion, that would be another study to look at what's feasible to do with the stormwater. And I say that because you can't release at a rate greater than you did prior to the improvements. And that's just what that's a rule in place that you don't damage downstream properties, basically, or downstream lands. And so if you want to look at funding other than loan and apply for state money for that, you would need to have a facility plan for that, similar to for wastewater. And so there would likely be another study required. Now, there should be time for that. When I get into the timeline later, we talked about looking at the collection system improvements first, because those are of greatest need, and waiting to apply for the street portion 1 year. Because most of the grant money is given out in January. That also, by applying twice, gives you an opportunity to obtain more grant money. And so you'd have time to look at that between now and when that application went in.
And maybe I should have just kept my mouth shut.
Well, that's a good question to ask.
Well, the DENR does, or there's a Fed statute that talks about the downstream. What you do upstream, you cannot affect radically downstream. And we all have a little bit of that coming off Lee, but not significant. If we got a lot of rain, yeah, then it does, it affects it, and everything runs into Bruley Creek, which, again, like I said, that you cannot do things upstream that affect your downstream neighbors.
And sometimes it's the pipe, water just moves faster through pipe that doesn't have obstructions versus sometimes the streets are, overland more. And so that's what usually is the challenge at times.
Sure.
I have one more document. This one might be a little more tolerable. This one is the DENR portion of the public hearing. So, and you'll hear me say 5.5 million here, and I just want to explain that because I know the cost is slightly higher than what is listed on the presentation here. And the reason I do that is there are grant administration costs if you get a grant that we put into our budget at SECOG, and then we also we just up it just a percentage just to make sure if a cost were to change between now and January, that that doesn't mean that it's going to derail the whole funding application.
Contingencies, basically.
Exactly. So if you didn't need that whole 5.5, fine, but then we're safe in terms of still submitting the application without me coming down here and doing another public hearing. So the City of Alcester is applying to DENR, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, for financing for the wastewater system improvements project. The project will be divided into 2 phases. The first phase of the project includes the replacement of aging clay tile pipe, as well as televising the entire collection system to determine pipe conditions. Improvements to the wastewater treatment facility will be included as well, and that includes equipment replacement, expansion of the existing aeration basin, and reallocation of the main power feed and operations area to reduce the impacts of flooding. The city, with SECOG's assistance, will be submitting applications to DENR for up to $5.5 million of clean water state revolving fund from that program for phase 1 of this project. The financing package for the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, which would be announced in March, could be any combination of loan, grant, or principal forgiveness. So you submit one application, and they'll tell you if you qualify for loan, grant, principal forgiveness.
Or could it be a combination of those three items?
Exactly,
Yeah.
yep, could be a combination. And then also if you get the CDBG grant, that would take off the top of that as well. The interest rate for the Clean Water SRF loan is 2.125%. They've gone down, which is good, for a 30-year term. There's no grant or principal, if there is no grant or principal forgiveness, the annual payment for that loan would be approximately $248,408.61. Should you wish to increase rates to cover that additional debt, the impact on rates would be a $55.54 increase per customer per month.
That's phase 1.
Phase 1. And as Tanya said, the January round is the round that the most grant money is available. So that's, why we will try to go in then. And then also the CDBG grant, that is due October 1st. And so we'll submit that first. We'll find out about that funding. DENR wants to know about that funding before they'll, apply their funding. So, any questions about that?
In a perfect world, if all the stars align, are we talking about, in essence, having to have a loan for 50% of this $5.5 million?
Yes, because the maximum grant or principal forgiveness is $2 million.
So that's a number that I think the public needs to be aware of. I'm not saying that it'll be that good. It might not be that good, but if everything was perfect, we still would owe $2.5 million or $2.75 million in the form of a loan. Now granted, that $55 was assuming we were going to pay all $5.5 million.
Correct.
So it stands to reason that it'd be $27.50 per person increase in their utility bill.
Yes.
That's important information for the public that's not here.
And it.
I'm a little disgusted about that, so.
Really?
Sorry.
And just because I've had communities who've layered different types of funding, and it is important, I think, to plan and know that up front, because even if you get grant funding, it's not that easy, especially with like CDBG, to go back and say, oh, well, we want to cut the project in half, because then what they're going to do is they're going to say, well, then we might take some of the grant funds away. Now, in a project like this, it's big enough where their portion is not going to be a significant percentage, but if you back off the project and their percentage goes up, they'll say, well, don't think about coming back to us for phase 2. So.
Sure.
I have seen it where we've had, and this has been a number of years now, but bids came in really good. And they did scale the loan back the percentage of the project. So let's say bids came in at 75% of the estimated cost, they only provided 75% of a grant. So,
yeah.
but that's been a number of years. But.
I'm going to pass around the sign-in sheet. I should have done that earlier while you guys had
And I want to have 2 other slides, just this kind of summary and an implementation plan. And so the one thing in here I want to point out, so on phase 1, we've got the wastewater improvements at $3.7 million. And then we've got the collection system improvements, which would include Offstat Street. And then the other improvements at 1.6, that total of 5.358 million. Now rounded up to, we've got it rounded up in the funding application to 5.5. So I've got it shown on here with the annual interest rate a little bit lower and the monthly rate increase per customer a little lower at 49 instead of 54.5 what Sarah's showing. So we should use her numbers, not these, just for the funding application and for the public hearing purpose. But the other thing I want to point out, as I was sitting there thinking where I know that it's hard because the stabilization ponds, which are used by so many small communities, seem like such a good option that should be considered. And I think in your gut, I can tell some of you, and initially I was too, thinking this should be more cost effective. Part of the reason is in my conversations with DNR, because you currently have an ammonia limit, if you go to a twice-a-year discharge permit, they want to see that same pound of ammonia loading over a period, the same as you are now. So because you would be discharging a very large volume with a twice-a-year discharge, your ammonia permit would actually get much tighter, because they would want over that, 2 or 3 week period, how many pounds you're discharging now to be the same, but you'd be discharging such a great quantity of water. And so that's partially why it would become, it's costly for the pond option, is because to get the ammonia limits that low, just the additional treatment required.
Okay, so the monthly rate increase for customer you have down here for phase 1 is $49.
Yep, but it would actually be with the 5.5 to 54.5.
Okay. And then phase 2 would be another $50. So it's like $2 a flush.
It feels that way, doesn't it? Well, and the one thing I want to point about phase 2 is, so as part of the facility plan, we kind of have to plan worst case scenario. So there's some things in phase 2 that you either maybe would not have to have, or the cost could come down. And that's because we had to plan for replacement of all that sewer in phase 2. We don't know what condition it's in. So that cost is going to depend highly on what those televising results come back, and if they show a significant portion of the lines need repair. So if they would have to be in good shape, that number could go down. If they're worse, it could go up a little bit. And same with the wastewater treatment plant improvements. In there, we have a pretreatment building shown. It would be really nice to have. I think any of you that toured that facility and saw the rake and some of the confined conditions and having to deal with that every day, it'd be really nice to have that pretreatment building. If the state regulations don't require it, it's not a have-to-have. It would be much more convenient for operators, better for the environment. But if it comes down to where financing is a real challenge, that's one area that could be delayed further. And so that's where there's flexibility in that phase 2 right now, somewhat. The only thing that's going to define phase 2 absolutely is if you have collapsing sewers that we find when we televise that are in dire need of repair, or if the state comes in with phosphorus and nitrogen limits that have to be met.
And from a funding perspective, I'll just add that it's smart to do the phasing as they've done it, because then you can go in for more grant funds next January. And then we could apply for CDBG a second time. And then there's also DOT funds that would apply to that area, that second area, because it includes your Main Street.
And so lastly, an implementation plan is also required for the public hearing, and it just explains the timeline of events and what would happen. So tonight is the facility plan public hearing. The next step would be SECOG applying to get on the state water plan as October 1st. And so that just gives the state the indication of what project you're going for and what you're applying for. And so that would be the phase 1 wastewater system improvements. And so then you would get that funding application into the DNR January 1, and they would notify you of those improvements. And then so we could begin design then in April and move forward with design over that kind of summer period and bid those projects in January. So that is kind of the
2022.
2022, yep. I think this timeline I've got things combined. And I think that we moved that, we shifted that one, and I don't know why it's not updated in this one. So that would be phase 1 treatment system in 2021, and then the phase 1 collection system in 2022 design. So it'd be construction for the treatment plant in 2022 and construction for the collection system in 2023. And that's where the phase 2 stuff is out in that 2025 to 2030 time window as far as starting those portions.
So technically speaking, we could apply for help, financial help, at the beginning of 2021. We could apply for financial help at the beginning of 2022. Then 5 to 7, 8, 10 years down the road, apply for help. And again, probably the same procedure, apply for help the following year.
Yep.
So,
And DNR shouldn't be, I mean, sometimes if you come back again and again and again, they get frustrated, but when you have a document like this that explains what you're doing and why and how the phasing is gonna occur, then they usually don't have issues with it, because they've been made aware and they know it's coming and they know you're gonna be coming back for a
they've
while.
been warned, so to speak, yeah.
Yeah.
Does phase one and phase two loan payments for the citizens, is it at the same time, or are those separate?
No, they would be phased out too. They would start, essentially, and you jump in because you probably know more. Is it 6 months after construction's completed that the loan payments start?
I don't know exactly how that would work.
Because we talked about phase one costing each household
Yep.
55, phase two is around 50.
Yep.
Yeah.
That won't be $105 for,
No,
Okay.
those would be spread out by 5 or 6 years. The costs are all in 2020 dollars, just so you know that, in 5 to 10 years, those projects are gonna cost more and it'll be more of an impact to customers. But no, that would be spread out. You'd have, the collection system improvement, or the treatment plant improvements would occur first, so you'd have, somewhat of an increase for that. And then when the collection systems got completed, it'd likely be, the rates would go up a little bit. But the other thing I would say too, it can be beneficial for the city to, you've been having, I think, annual rate increases.
That's what I was gonna say, yeah. I've seen that before.
Yep, continue doing that and maybe increasing a little more than you would to try to accumulate some cash. Then you can, pay those loans down just a little bit and reduce that rate impact somewhat. So that's helpful too.
So when we went through the tour down there, I was on that. In layman's terms, they're gonna say, why do we need to do this? What would happen if we didn't fix it? Didn't we discuss we could get sewering back up into your basement? Is that something?
I think the worst case scenario is if a collection line that's failing, if it collapses, you can have sewage back up. If the plant gets completely inundated, and they can't push flow through because a pump fails or things don't work, that's the worst case. And I don't want to sound like a naysayer or just the world's ending. I don't want to come across that way, but it is real. You got to take care of the infrastructure you have. Otherwise, things like that. The other probably, I would say, more likely concern would be you could violate your discharge permit and have a
Violations.
have
Have a big
violations from the
fine?
DNR.
Is that,
Eventually, if you had repeat issues that you were not working towards addressing, yes, you can be fined.
And probably the biggest thing that started this is our plant equipment is old. Getting replacement parts to fix it is getting difficult. And so we're looking at buying new pieces of equipment to fix what we have.
Well, and some of the plant is so low that if we do get water like we've gotten the last couple of years, not 2020 necessarily, but there are pieces of equipment that are underwater. And they're electrical pieces of equipment. That's not good.
It's the main power feed into the plants. Like the main power coming in has been underwater. And that's just, to me, an operational nightmare. And for the safety of your staff, to relocate that up on the hill, there's a building right there. It's a pretty easy, it's expensive, but if you're replacing a lot of that electrical equipment anyway, this is the perfect time to move it. And it's that electrical equipment that you cannot find parts for once it gets to be 15 to 20 years old. It's really hard. Operators run into that all the time.
sounds like somebody screwed up in the design, put that building that low to start with.
Well, yeah, they maybe didn't think about major runoff
Well,
or major flooding.
1939, it might have been a dry year.
Yeah.
but phase one has been televised, it's needed.
Portions of it have been televised, not the whole thing. The alleyways between, what's the roads east of Alcester? Union? That one hasn't.
No, we haven't done Union and we haven't done Groton.
No.
So really, Chief, in essence, that televising is gonna be our we're clinging to that as seeing less problems than we really are. We're looking at worst case scenario here, replacing a whole bunch of stuff And hopefully a lot of it doesn't need replacing, but
But it's piping.
we better be prepared for replacing it all. Because it's 30, 40, 50, 70 years old, you know, whatever, however.
Any other questions at all? Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure to work with the city on this. I've enjoyed getting to know some of you more. And hopefully after tonight you have a greater understanding of wastewater and we can be as excited as you are. I know. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
both.
you.
Melissa and Marcus, are you still awake?
I am. Yes, I am.
Well, excellent. I've been snoozing for the last 25 minutes, so I'm fresh and ready to go with number 8, street and pool updates. Lonnie Johnson.
Well, I don't have a whole lot. We got some more street repairs to do. Our truck's been out of commission for a while with waiting for new brake lines. I don't know if you had to order them from the factory or what happened there, but we'll get some more streets fixed here, and other than that, we got a storm drain to replace down by the fire station that's caving in, and, you know,
Body, item.
Thanks for getting the lines painted. Downtown looks a lot nicer with all the freshly painted lines.
Parker Dooley and Cash Hemmingson actually did all those, so they're gonna do a little more down by Alcota and Custom Coils. I think they're gonna start mapping it out next week, so.
Lonnie, there was one comment during public input about Mitchell Drive. The east end of Mitchell Drive might need some assistance.
Okay, yeah. We did dig a manhole up there earlier this summer over there, and that's, I'm guessing that's a concern. It's probably pothole.
That could be part of it, but I know that when I was over there talking to Nathan, we were walking on that curb that would be on the south side of Mitchell, and, I mean, that's a drop-off. I mean,
Is it right in that bend?
wow. I don't know. All I think of it as the furthest east you can go on Mitchell Drive and still be on the street, or Mitchell Street, or whatever that is, Mitchell Drive.
It's a drive.
Yeah,
I'll check it out, so.
Past the church entrance.
absolutely.
Oh, it is.
It's actually just directly north of Beeler's home there, in that area. So it's as far east as you can go and
Well,
still be on the street.
if nothing else, I'll get some gravel over there and get it filled until I get the ability to get patching material back here in town, so. The other thing is, just wanted to mention, we have a school zone sign out of commission right now. Hopefully I'll get that running tomorrow. I believe the circuit board went out in it, so I'm just gonna swap it with one of our spares. And hopefully we're good to go. But
How about, are you talking about the one on Highway 11?
no, that one, I didn't realize I have to go reset the start date on those every year because I didn't last year and it worked. But this year, I had to reset the start date, just bump the date up and then change the end date. So, because it didn't know that it still thought it was 2019, basically is what was happening, so, or whatever. But, so that's going. This is the one that would be over by Lincoln and Anderson,
Yeah,
just to the north.
okay.
So, that's all I got.
So if we take a step from the streets to the pool just for a minute, I noticed that, you know, for the first, I don't know how many feet, we'll say 3.5, 4 feet of water, I mean, it all ran out.
Yep.
And is that where we're stopping for the winter time, or will more
Nope.
come out of there?
We'll let it out, just the deep end will be underwater come winter, so.
Okay.
That's just what naturally will drain out for level compared to the pipes in the pump house.
I see.
So we actually will have to go open a different valve and let it out north of the open park shelter, so.
Ah, that's where that came out, yeah. Last year, well, I shouldn't say that, but this spring, when we had all the people up in arms about water running in the
Yeah.
park, that's where, yeah, okay.
And yeah, we usually wait on that one so that it doesn't make that portion of the park unusable
Yep.
during summer, fall months, so.
Sure. Okay. So that's pretty much all that he has. It looks to me like we have, or need for a motion to hire Veronica Reed as bathhouse attendant for $9.50 per hour.
She filled in when we had guards that weren't available, so I just formally need to.
Why do we need this?
Yeah, so basically we're hiring her after the fact, but
She's still sterilizing.
Is she gonna come back? Okay.
I don't know, she might, if she's not mowing the school.
Oh, okay. I'll make a motion to hire Veronica Reed for the bathhouse attendants when we, lifeguard, not enough lifeguards.
I'll second that.
and I'm assuming you're okay with the $9.50 per hour in that motion?
Yes, $9.50 an hour, yep.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Any other discussion?
Who seconded?
Linda? So Darla made the motion, Linda seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Melissa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Marcus? I didn't hear anything, Marcus. Hello, Marcus.
Can you hear me?
No, now I can, yes,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, I said, sorry, apparently I somehow muted both of my ear things. I abstained.
You abstained, okay. David?
Aye.
Vickie?
Aye.
Darla?
Aye.
5 yes, 1 abstained. Motion passed. Wastewater updates. I would say we've been updated pretty well. Dale has left.
He just
Oh.
been out.
Perfect.
For 10.
Good timing, Dale. So we're,
That,
You're up.
yeah, you're it. It says updates. I don't know if you've got more updates than what we've already heard.
I think that's about it.
Okay. Then there are 2 other sections, TTHM/HAA water test results.
Yeah, did we get those?
Yes, we did.
Yep.
And we're good, aren't we?
Yes.
I just went and spoke to her because I had an intermediate well pump not running anymore. Just got it fixed not too long ago and it failed again. So I told her we might as well put a submersible in or whatever they want to do to renovate this thing instead of repairing old stuff.
Oh,
So that's why I went out there with her. So she gave me some numbers. Other than that, I got nothing.
the only other section says letter C wastewater rate increase discussion, and you're aware of the fact that we already have that kind of in the works. Scheduled to start January.
Well, Sam is drafting the resolution on that. Initially, and that's what I generated the budget off of, was a 6% increase. I'm thinking maybe we should consider a greater increase, so we can start stockpiling the cash for this project,
So what is a typical sewer bill right now?
Well,
I mean, before the 6%.
I did that in your packets
It was
last month, and it was like a
I remember.
$2 increase for people.
That was for 6%, right? So all I'm trying to do is, I'm just trying to say, at 10%, we're probably looking at 350. I'm arbitrarily
probably
throwing out a
five.
number.
At the most.
I would say 5 at the most,
Yeah.
correct. So,
Well, and this kind of speaks to what the chief of police was talking about earlier, you know, when we deal with $50, that's hard to swallow. But when you deal with $5 and
Yes.
$5 and $5, well, eventually it's $50, folks, but it's a little easier to swallow anyway. So, I agree that.
Did I understand her right? And she was saying, if we wanna like wait a year or two to actually start this process, then they don't wanna hear from us anymore? Was that accurate, or, you know, the
I guess I didn't-
EPA and the government as far as loans go?
I guess I didn't hear that.
I think she mentioned if we axed like half of the project and then we
Yeah.
still wanted to get the loan.
I see.
They were less
Because
inclined.
the longer we wait, and if we can start stacking money up, and, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Offers, that's
Right.
Yeah.
one of the
In essence, that's what should have been done the last 20 years. I mean, if you'd have just increased it $1 a year
Yep.
for 20 years, you'd already be at $20 more
Right.
now, which would make it look a lot better.
A lot easier to swallow. That's-
So that's a lesson well learned, and I think that from here on out, we'll see small increases. I mean, it doesn't have to be a huge increase to sock some money away, so. Because it's not gonna get cheaper. I mean, none of this is gonna get less expensive over time, so.
so Sam will be drafting the resolution. Do you want to draft it at 6% with the thought process that it might change at the time of adoption? Or would you rather have it be another number?
Open it up.
Well, we're probably gonna need it more than 6%, aren't we?
Well, 6% allowed us to get to that dollar amount that allowed us to get on the water
So-
plan.
What will get us to that, do you think?
Warm it up first.
To what she is saying?
The 6% will do that.
The 54?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
That would just get our rate to that minimum that they want you
Okay.
to be at before they even look at you for funding.
Well, but I think we should go a little more than that.
Right.
I agree.
So we
agree.
have not too drastic, I mean,
You think
integrated a little more.
10%?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I'm thinking 10 also.
And that would probably be as easy as any number.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. Easy to calculate, it's easy to. And, I mean, it's only gonna look better to the people that are
Right.
gonna give us money.
Right,
They're
that
gonna
we're
give
trying
us
to
money
do this,
based on
yes.
how we are stewards of said money,
Mhm.
so.
And Sarah did say that if they see that we're being proactive and that we're already doing this, that is a better case for us as well.
I think 10% is a
I'd
good
say
number
10.
myself.
Okay.
So maybe relay that to Sam, and
I
then
will.
we'll take a look at that the first time. Okay, any other discussion regarding the wastewater rate increase? Okay, hearing none. We will move on to Chief Christie.
Yeah.
Here. Thank you, guys.
Some tough acts to follow.
A lot cheaper though.
Yeah. You guys have stats in front of you. Like, once again, it's roughly around 50, maybe 60, 65 cases over the month. I need to find more time. I need to sit down with Pat and go over what's left of our budget, iron out some stuff for the end of the year. The new PD is great. It works out really great. I will say walk-ins are drastically up. I don't know what it is, but now that it's just police, people want to report everything, which is great. It's just, sometimes it's a little bit tough to get some stuff done when I'm trying to type during the day, but it's a really great building, guys, and I do appreciate all the hard work from everybody on it, so. Teamed up with the sheriff's office on a DUI checkpoint on the south end of town there, 302 and 11. No DUI arrests, which is good. Did have a drug arrest, so it was nice to know that people weren't drinking as much that night. It was like on a Tuesday night.
Yeah,
so.
it was a Tuesday night, 'cause
Right.
my sister got stopped
Oh,
after
okay.
she left my house.
Sure. I was gonna thank Lonnie, he is trying to work through those signs, and he's informed me that he wished he could go back in time with the chief at that time and reorder a different one, but we have them, it is what it is now, he's gonna try and make them work. He struggles with it every year, and it seems like the weather really makes him go bad, so. Other than that, I need to let you guys know, like, I am not gonna give up on drug enforcement. I'm gonna continue to hit that hard. If you're gonna bring drugs into Alcester, or sell them, or even just transport them through town, I'm gonna continue to hit that hard. I'm not giving up on
I'm
it.
not sure if it's my phone or.
Oh, you know what, we should actually move you guys, hang on a minute.
Move them again.
You come to me. Good, I like this podium.
Yeah.
It's my safe place right there.
He's quite a ways away from you, from the phones here, hang on. Can you hear him now?
How about now?
Coffee?
It is I, Jeff, the chief.
I can hear you.
All right.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Just kind of my last talking point was narcotics and drugs. That's been our August and first part of September here is, I have the amount of just raw narcotics and paraphernalia in my evidence is ridiculous. I have bongs for everybody in this room, you know what I mean? It's absolutely crazy what we've come up with in the last month. And I just let the other council members know that I'm just not gonna give up on it. It's exhausting. I'm tired of typing, tired of doing search warrants. Austin has been worked probably harder than I have. But I've heard some rumors that people want to minimize, like, well, they're just doing weed arrests or marijuana arrests. It's not just weed or marijuana. Every one of our cases involve a felony arrest for felony drugs. Getting any kind of illegal narcotics into Alcester is a criminal enterprise. Somebody's getting hurt somewhere. Somebody's paying the price to transport it, pay for it. It's just, we're not going to stop doing it. I wanted to let you guys know that. My goal in the beginning when I took over was to keep methamphetamine out of the high school. I feel like I've done well at that. I think we've got a subculture, I would say, of narcotics users in town, and I'm kind of proud that we've kept it to a subculture. I don't think it's the norm. You're not going to drive by the park and see somebody smoking weed in their car, and I'm frankly pretty proud of that. But I'm also going to keep working to keep it out of the schools, keep it out of kids' hands. People want to minimize marijuana, but also you're not seeing kids get into drugs. So I'm sorry, but if it's illegal, we're going to enforce the law. So that's where I'm at.
I think that's a very good point, Chief. I think there's a misconception among a lot of people that may have this document in front of them, that they look at this and they say, well, you had 66, I don't care what they're called, evidence collection things or whatever. That's not that much. For two guys in a month, that's not that much. The only thing is, 40 of those would be held for two guys normally. So the other 26, I don't think people are quite aware of really how much work goes into the whole process. And if they were, maybe there would be a little bit more understanding regarding how tired you guys are and how beat. I mean, you need some more help. You really do need some more help.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, my stress level is through the roof. I'll sneak in at 10, 11 at night just to type, so I can have some clean time to type, just be left alone. Or I'll take my laptop home and do it in do it at my house. And I hate how our report system prints out for stats for you guys. It can say non-hazardous moving violation, which is a warning. And again, I know I've explained this, but I want to again. I may have warned them for the stop sign violation, but arrested them on the felony methamphetamine and intent to distribute. And so I hate how it's titled, and I need to work on that better with Zerker, getting it accurately described on the stats, because it doesn't look like. When I look back in the last month, we have one drugs narcotics case number listed on there.
Yeah.
Well, I know for sure there's, I think 3 or 4 bigger dope cases on there. So, and countless hours of work.
So why does your Zerker, when you arrest somebody for drugs after stopping them for a taillight out?
Yeah. So when I call in the traffic stop, Dave, I call it in, hey, I'm stopping this car for whatever reason. They put it as a traffic stop as the title. Now, when I go in and add my charges, they're charged out with felony drug arrest and whatever else it is. That title remains, it started as a traffic stop, so that's what they leave it as. There is some ways to go back in and switch that title before you run the stats, but I like to keep everything as is. I'll find a better way so it's more accurately portrayed on there. But yeah, we're tired. And everybody is. Everybody works hard. I realize that. Just last month alone is getting to me.
So is there a part-timer that's available to take a shift that can help out?
Yeah, we got 2 on the roster. I just texted them today again, hey, what do you guys think of this day? Or just to get an evening where it's neither Austin or I, but then I'll just field phone calls from home. That's how it goes. But yes, it's helped. That's where I'm at. Any other questions? All right.
I know you've probably seen statements on Facebook, I mean, and I don't have any problem telling it from the mountaintops. I think you guys are both doing an outstanding job, and it's not lip service, that's legitimate, I mean, respect for you both as officers and for doing the jobs that you're doing.
Yeah.
It's appreciated by at least me.
I wish everybody could, like Melissa Kay spent, or in Marcus as well. They've spent some time interning down at the state attorney's office. I wish everybody could take a turn down there to see what comes through in Union County alone, or even in Alcester, felony cases. It's crazy. You would be blown away.
It's probably a good thing that we don't,
Yeah.
because we probably would be cowering in fear in our house with a, 357 all the time, so. Thanks, Chief. We go on to Pleasant Hill Cemetery landfill updates. Parker is not here.
I met with Parker today, and we kind of came up with his tentative to-do list for the next couple weeks. With it being dry, he hasn't had to have a lot of hours out there mowing. And so, working with Lonnie, we came up with some ideas for him. So him and Cash next week will be doing Iowa Street, like Lonnie said. And he's gonna blade the roads on the cemetery and get them ready for winter. He's going to get an official quote for the Gravely lawnmower replacement for next year. He and Lonnie looked at different mowers, and I think we're gonna be looking at a Bobcat mower for a replacement.
Oh.
So he's gonna get a formal quote on that. So, yeah, he's got his.
Where's he gonna do that?
Eastway.
Oh, really?
Where?
Eastway over in Beersford. Just put a bug in his ear. He might want to try to contact that small business, D&D small engine repair. They're by Lennox. I mean, the largest, now I can't remember the name of the company. They make yellow, it's not Cub Cadet, they make yellow.
Hustler,
the largest Hustler dealer in the nation.
Well, Lonnie likes the Hustler, and he's kind of suggested, so when Parker and I met first, and then I followed up with Lonnie, Lonnie's like, I'll have him visit the Hustler as well.
And if they do go over to D&D, I mean, I walked my Gravely there, and they treated me right, so it's worth checking them. So,
If he has some extra time, there's a lot of volunteer trees out there that should be cut and
Okay.
tore down.
At the,
Golf course?
Well,
no, at the
Oh,
cemetery.
at the cemetery.
Cemetery.
Yeah,
Every spruce tree has 2 or 3 volunteer mulberries in it or next to it.
We're gonna meet weekly now, so I will put that
I
on
mean, if
his
he needs
list.
some hours, that'd be something to do.
when,
Okay.
I believe he's going into the service, is that the plan?
Still a work in process,
Okay, so we don't know any more than we did before?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Parker. How about golf course, Dave?
Things are probably gonna start quieting down now after Labor Day. We are going to aerate the greens early next week, and so there'll be a bunch of sand on them. Play won't be so good for a couple days, but they grow back. Other than that, I think things are rolling along pretty well.
Seen quite a few people out there golfing, that's very encouraging.
I think we've had more people there this year than in the past.
Seems like it.
Yeah, it does seem that way.
Library has a used book sale here at the city office. So if anybody's looking for some used books. And then Michelle asked us, she said that there were several people that were concerned about coming to the library when masks weren't being used. So she was wondering if we could set up a time when older folks maybe could come and masks would be required. So I surveyed the library board, and we thought that the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings from 5 to 7 would be good. I don't know.
Yeah,
Saturday morning is fine, as usual, but some adults gotta come and either check out books or work on the computer or whatever. They have a couple opportunities when library is open and masks are required, and they won't maybe feel so stressed out about going there.
that makes sense. And I'm assuming that information will be posted at the library.
That's posted at the library, and I think there might even be something in the paper.
I was gonna say, if
It's on
it's,
the, it's on the website too.
yeah, it should be
On
in the paper.
Facebook, not website, Facebook.
Okay. So that takes care of the golf course updates and the library updates. It looks to me like there's a need for a motion to hire some people at $10 an hour. Clubhouse attendance. Tara DeBerg, Cash Hemmingson, Cindy Peoples.
This is the time of the year when our people that are school related, their main job is with school, go back to teaching or being an aide or whatever they're doing. So we need some help. So I would make a motion that we hire Tara DeBerg, Kay Hemmingson, and Cindy Peoples as clubhouse attendants at $10 an hour.
Second.
That was Marcus.
Yep.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to hire Tara DeBerg, Cash Hemmingson, Cindy Peoples as clubhouse attendants, $10 per hour. We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Melissa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Marcus?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Vickie?
Aye.
Darla?
Aye.
All aye. Motion passed. Okay, We can go on to legal updates.
13 and 14 are not needed.
Okay, neither 13 nor 14 are needed. So then we can go on to number 15, Plan Development District. And I believe there's a map in your packet.
So at our September 17th meeting, we're gonna move forward with the Plan Development District, but there was a question that was asked of me before we get started on this. How does the council feel with respect to this building? Does the council want to become the owner, or the city want to become the owner of this building? And I provided the map so that you could see in our plan development district for this, we were looking to split this whole block into 3. Tract 3 would be the original school. Tract 2 is the portion we're in, and the grounds and the parking lot. And tract 1 is the shed. So in talking with the industrial board, it just felt like if the city is interested in tract 2, then that would save a step from transferring it to the industrial board and then retransferring it back to the city. I need to confirm with Mr. Reed. Originally, the school was willing to give up tract 1 and 2, and they were going to keep 3 until a different agency wanted to take 3. The school may not want to give up 1. So right now they're using it for some storage for their winter equipment, and they also have a possibility of an idea to put in there. So I do need to follow up with Mr. Reed if that is even going to be an option. But the bigger question is, do you feel that this is a good thing for the city to become an owner of this building, or would you rather continue to be a renter?
I think it kind of defeats, if we take over as owners, doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose of why we got out of the auditorium in the first place?
Well, this building is a little bit different than the auditorium in the fact that we will have tenants, where we never had that in the auditorium. It's not quite as old a building as the auditorium, although
It doesn't have what?
It's not quite as old, she said.
we have tenants in this building now. There are other people that are leasing rooms where we never had that in the auditorium.
So it could actually be somewhat self-sustaining. I'm not going to say an income-generating proposition, but self-sustaining proposition for a lot of the maintenance, etc. And that, I think, is her point in the tenant portion.
There are a lot of unknowns about this building. I have not gone through a winter in this building. I haven't even gone through a heavy rain yet in this building. So judging from the ceiling tiles, inevitably we have some leaks in different places, but I can't tell you where those are yet. I did ask I asked Mrs. Hayes, I said, so what is the heat like? Because that was always an issue for Wanda and I in the other building. And she said, you will not want for heat. So that's positive. We have finally gotten the humidity level under control in here, so I'm very happy about that. I know for a while we're going to have a lot of quote-unquote friends, because Parker was assisting someone on the upper level of the school, and he saw some friends up there, and I'm talking little gray furry friends. So there is going to be some interesting things along the way, but it's just
Are these flying or are they crawling?
they're crawling,
Okay.
little gray ones.
Mice and
Yeah.
rats and
Yeah.
lions and tigers and bears.
So I don't know the answer to the question. I'm just throwing it out there, getting your input. and we
So
go
we
from there.
can't just have track 2.
Yes, we could.
We can.
We
Do
could
we
just have
want
track
track
2.
1? What would we want track 1 for, to try and,
Well, the industrial board's original intent
was a shells?
was to sell it, you know, take
Mhm.
possession of it, because the school wanted to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
So take possession of it and then sell it and use that as working capital to maintain track 2.
Because they didn't know of anybody that was going to be leasing at that time.
That is correct.
Okay,
So there have been developments, new developments. And, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I had heard that there are even some possible other developments coming in the future. I mean, you never know,
right.
but
So have you heard a figure for rent, like for one of the rooms for business?
The industrial board is charging $400 for a classroom.
Okay, so at thrift stores, $800.
They did do an exception for them. For the 2 rooms is $400 for
Okay.
them. But
And how many rooms are there?
Plus this one.
Plus this one. So you've got 2 over there already used for 400, so you got 3 more possible.
and we
right.
have the Legion and VFW in a 1 right now.
We're gonna need, with
And-
this plan for the community center, we're gonna need one or someplace for the fitness center.
true.
That's $400 a month.
Is one classroom going to be big enough for that?
Well, we've looked at a couple of classrooms for them, for the fitness center. One is the home ec room, and one is the choir. The home ec room is more desirable for them.
Bigger?
But
Natural light.
Oh,
does it have, is there a second story above that?
That I'm not sure. I don't know
There is.
the
I
layout.
was thinking there was too, but then it's been a long time.
I think the old library, isn't that above one of those?
Uh,
I think the home ec room has something above it. I thought it did too,
Yeah.
Kathy, and it's been,
yeah, it does have something
Yeah.
above it. You
That,
are correct.
so that's not, is that in tract 2? Or is that in tract 3?
No, it would be in track 3.
That's what I was thinking, so then,
The choir room,
Honestly, I'm
you
just-
could, that's on the borderline of 2 and 3.
I'm just not thrilled about tract 3.
yeah. 3
I'm
is,
sorry, I'm not, I just think the upkeep is going to be too much.
Well, at this point, the school is, the track 3 is not in question, unless
They're
you
gonna
guys
keep it,
want
right.
it.
which I don't think anybody really is excited about it.
So would the school maybe work something out with the fitness center to have the fitness center? Do you think then, if that's in tract 3, you're saying?
You know, it's all part of this plan development, so,
well, when you go down this hallway,
Uh-huh.
this room and everything on that side of the hallway, and the bathrooms
Mhm.
have a separate boiler, air conditioning, heating system.
Okay.
Everything else
Is-
is from the
And that's
old boiler
Okay.
system. And to be usable, like the home ec room, I would think would have to be, they'd have to
Okay.
rewire it, put in
Okay.
baseboard heat, electric heat,
we talked about those units that,
rent infrared,
yeah.
yeah, that'd work.
I mean, it's got plumbing, so it's positive in
Mhm.
that regard. It's got a lot of natural light. It's got easy access if we expanded a parking lot here
Mhm.
for 24-hour access, so they're not in the rest of this building.
Right.
You could put in a separate entrance there.
Yes.
We were paying $26.50, I think it was, per month for both of us to be able to go, and we just had a fob,
Mhm.
and just, we'd go 24
Right.
hours a day. Of course, you got some kind of security system you've got to have there,
Uh-huh.
but then, I mean, if you, I don't know how many people you got to have, well, 20 would give you $500 a month right
Mhm.
there. No.
Well, that's square foot wise, that's bigger room than the classroom.
So that would probably do it. I'd have to go and look at it. I've never seen a home ec room, but I can remember what they had in the basement of the bank. And
It's not as big as this room. It's about 3/4 of this room, because it's
Oh, that's-
long and skinny.
that's what they had down in the basement of the bank.
It's about 2 classroom sizes.
If you took that butt wall right there and ran it all the way down here, this is the basement of the bank, right here. We're sitting in.
I'd say that's a fair estimation of the home ec room as well. So
Okay.
from Wanda's desk, draw a line all the way here
Okay.
to here would be the home ec room.
It's almost exactly the same as far as size. And I know that they don't have all of the equipment, at least not at school. Now, whether it will stay at the bank, I don't know whether they opted to just keep some of the equipment for their own employees' sake to give them a little, benefit, side benefit, I don't know.
So it's,
I'm not, right now, I think this is too much of a chance to take this over.
I
okay,
agree.
so
Well,
let
the beautiful
industrial
part
take
about it,
I'd rather keep paying rent.
Okay,
the
even if
beautiful
it's-
part about it is it could happen later, because if the industrial board is willing to let us do it now, they probably would be willing to let us do it later if we did decide that we wanted to. Probably.
I would be in favor of taking this over. I'd want some more information though. I'd want more information. But it's doable.
what information would you like?
I would like to know exactly what classrooms,
Okay,
or, that, like I said, if we have the availability to rent out to cover the expenses of the city offices and stuff, we're keeping that, we're keeping that in motion.
Yeah. And keep in mind, that one of the things that we discussed here not too long ago was these ladies were able to do a pretty fair job of dealing with operating the auditorium. This is a different duck. This is a lot more complex to maintain the heat, air conditioning, etc.
it would definitely require another position.
Part-time janitor, whatever you call
To be a
it.
maintenance person, because you're right, the heating and cooling system is way above my pay grade in this.
Now, whether that, I'm not saying Parker Dooley, but whether that would be a
Incorporated in the
Parker Dooley-
utility.
Exactly. that-
Yeah, incorporate
so-
the utility position.
But again, I mean, if you're bringing in $400 from that entity and you're maybe gonna bring in 400,
Yeah.
now all of a sudden it can pay somebody and keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Now,
Like I said, on the face of it, I'm in favor of it. Because
It'd be nice to go through the winter and find out where the leaks are.
it would be,
Yeah.
and we can always get a cat for the rodents.
I might have one that could be rented out.
Yeah,
All right.
Don't feed the cat,
Well,
it's gonna
thank
get the
you,
rodents.
thank you for your insight, that's what I will relay back to,
I did get one day at work, I got a text from somebody, and it said, "I'm not in your ward, but I would just like to advise you, I would highly recommend you do not take over the high school."
Were they referring to
The
that
old
building?
part, the old
Yeah.
high school,
That's the way I feel about it too.
I agree.
What is that, Jose?
She said that she had somebody that said they would highly recommend not taking over what would be called track 3, the old
2-story part.
multiple-story high school.
I'm not in favor of taking over any of them.
Okay, so we got that from you, Melissa. I know you said something, Marcus, but we didn't hear it.
I don't have the map or the layout of how these tracks are set up, because that wasn't in the email, but is the part 3 the old part of the school with the paved roof?
Yes.
Yes,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't recommend taking that either.
yeah. And track 1 is the little, I don't know, to me it looks like a government or a governor's house.
No.
No,
Oh, yeah,
no,
the
that's,
north
that's the
side.
ag
It's the
build,
shop.
that's,
It's
the
the
yeah,
ag
the shop
shop,
build.
yeah.
It's the ag shop, okay. Oh, yeah, we
Oh,
were
okay, I got it.
way over in the, all the way in the northwest corner.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so then everything else is track 2. So the library that we're sitting in right now, also known as the finance office, the thrift store, which is the first 2
Unless,
classrooms all joined in as one, and then 3 more classrooms down the hall, as well as the restrooms and the utility area, right directly west of where we're sitting right now, in the,
That's the newest addition.
yep, the new part of the school.
what?
So, Melissa, you said basically you're not all that in favor of taking over anything, and I think everybody here is at the point where we're saying, let's wait and see for right now. I think that's the case. Okay, I see a lot of nodding, and assuming I don't hear anything else, we will go on to some other topic. All right then. The next thing would be the finance office updates.
I don't have a lot other than, met with the budget committee again. We retweaked a few areas. I also met with Diane Nye, and we did end up getting a $584 refund from swapping out all this property and insurance and all this and that, so, hopefully now we have our asset list up to date with the required coverages for everything, so, and that's adding the police department, dropping the auditorium, only personal property, things we're not insuring a building, because we don't own the building, so we just have personal property in here.
Was that an additional budget committee meeting, or?
We had our first one,
Oh.
and then I did the budget, and then we had a,
You were there.
Oh, okay,
The second one,
yes,
the 3 of you were there, right?
okay.
And you,
yes.
I mean, obviously you were there, but. Okay. No more updates. Then letter B says warrants, a motion to approve the road guy construction bill. That was $16,675.64, coming out of general fund. That's 2020 chip seal and approved final payment to Dakota Construction Services for the new police department, $7,962.25. That would come out of the second penny fund. And I would need a motion for that.
I think those should be broken down into 2 motions. So
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the road guy construction bill, $16,675.64 coming out of the general fund for 2020 chip seal.
I'll second that.
And, all right, Dave made that motion and Linda seconded. Is there any discussion regarding the road guy construction bill? Hearing none. Melissa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Marcus?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Vickie?
Aye.
Darla?
Aye.
All aye. Motion passed. The second motion then would deal with the payment to Dakota Construction Services for $7,962.25 to be taken from the second penny fund, and that would be for the police department remodel labor. Well, and some materials, I mean. And I would need a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to approve the final payment to Dakota Construction Services for $7,962.25 from second fund.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Melissa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Marcus,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Vickie,
Aye.
Darla.
Aye.
All vote yes. 5 yes, motion passed. Hold on just one moment.
That should be 6 yes.
That's what I meant, 6 yes.
Okay.
Excuse me. All yes. And then we would need a motion to approve the warrants.
How'd we do? Anybody have any questions? I'll make a motion to approve all warrants.
Second.
Motion was made by Dave and seconded by Marcus. Any discussion? Hearing none. Melissa, how do you vote?
I'm going to abstain since I did not find any.
Understood. Linda?
Aye.
Marcus?
Abstain.
David?
Aye.
Vickie?
Aye.
Darla?
Aye.
4 yes, 2 abstain. Motion passes. Ambulance allowance for $1,000. That's kind of a,
This is just a follow-up. When we made the budget last year, we had allowed $1,000 for equipment, and then we had allowed $1,000 for fire school sponsorship. And I have not paid either one of those, so that's why I asked Jeff Nahaba that question earlier, so he'll probably get back to us after their meeting. And then I don't know how, they didn't have fire school this year. They were gonna do in-house training. I didn't know if you still wanted that money, if you want me to cut it back to them for that.
can we maybe just reserve this for a later day this year? And get more information from Jeff Nahaba and possibly Chief,
Cass?
yeah. And just find out, where do they stand? I mean, they need to know that we're looking at a $5 million, everybody needs to know that this is not gonna be a fun time here for a while, financially. So, I think they just gotta realize that if they don't need the $1,000, if they didn't do the training, if they don't need the piece of equipment, we could certainly hang on to that $2,000. It would be nice. That's my opinion.
I agree.
So prior to the next meeting, do you want me to ask Pat Cass what would you like me to ask Pat Cass, I guess?
Just maybe for either justification or, and I wouldn't even have a problem talking with him myself. I mean, I could do that. I talk with Jeff Nahaba many times a week. I mean, so let me touch base with them and just see what they think before we go any further. And I might even be able to get back to you this next meeting. I can't say.
Okay, good job.
Okay, can I beg for just a few minute recess before we go into the budget presentation? Just,
Can I ask a question? Didn't we give some money to the school for the sign?
Yes.
And I thought we were gonna get to put something on there. I was thinking this meeting with the sewer thing would have been a really good thing to have on there.
oh, boy.
Yeah.
I thought maybe that would be on there several times. I looked and it was never there. I just thought it would be a good, maybe
It would
more,
be, yeah.
maybe more people would have seen, I don't know, maybe not. But I look at it all the time when I go by there.
I did, after our last meeting, actually when I gave them the check, I delivered it to Kristen, and I asked her, I said, I'm assuming there's a specific format you need
Okay.
when you're going to put something on there so that they can put it on there easily. And she did email me the spec sheet, and I haven't created anything to give
Okay.
her yet, but.
Well, I just thought maybe that would have been on there since we were hoping to have some people here.
I actually had a phone call before I came and it said, I just thought I'd tell you, it's so cold tonight. I think I'm gonna just stay home. I was gonna come, but, so, I mean, I think somebody was gonna come.
Yeah, maybe.
It's not a blizzard yet, though.
No, not yet.
one update I should have given you guys too is, we were having a trouble with the toilets in the park not flushing properly. And so young people would have no way of knowing how to flush it. I mean, we wrote a sign that said, please hold the handle down until it goes down. Well, no little person is gonna do that. And the men's, I would have to pump that thing like 5 to 10 times to get it to go down. It would swirl and it would put new water in, but it would never go down. So I had a commercial plumber come and he said, and I don't know what it's called, but it's the inner thing. You can either have it rated at 1.5 gallons or 3, and we had 1.5 gallons in there. And he put a 3 in, so for $40 for each toilet, we could have a new 3 in there. So I did, and now it flushes beautifully. He said, one time down, and it goes. So hopefully we won't have all the drama that we have had.
This men's room right here,
Yes.
the very first stall, same problem. 2, maybe 3 times before.
On the first urinal, I just had that fixed.
No, not urinal.
Oh, toilet.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't used the toilet. I mean, not that I used the urinal, but I didn't know there was a problem with the toilet.
So I should delete this off the recording?
All I had in there was paper. There wasn't anything in there.
I thought it was safe to turn it back on, you guys.
It's fine.
And it wouldn't get out.
Okay.
All right. So now we move on to item G. Melissa and Marcus, I'm assuming you're with us. Oops, sorry, item E. Budget presentation, 2021 budget presentation.
I'm here. I have a quick question before we move on to that little subpoint. The appropriation ordinance, is that like an actual document outside of the budget?
It's the last page in that, in the budget that I sent you. It's page 22 for you.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. So, and Marcus, you'll have this copy waiting for you, but I actually, when I do the budget, I do put it in a binder. I do have it separated out into sections, so when you get back, stop by City Hall and you can have your copy. But the first part of it is we do a capital improvements plan, that's our SIP. And so we have 2019 through 2024. And it's broken down by streets, police, finance, park and pool, and then of course our enterprise funds. So the information that's in here then flows through to our budget.
Can I take you back to page 1? 2024, $2,200,000 park pool. What are we talking about? New pool, new liner, new what?
No, pool.
Pool. Okay.
I know it's a pipe dream, but
I know,
we have to
I
start
know.
somewhere.
Well, I mean, that's the only way to, yeah, okay. It's a
So,
budget. It's
yeah,
not-
it's a plan.
Yeah.
It is a plan. So, anyway, the page number 1 of the SIP is just basically a summary of numbers for the remaining 7 pages. And the remaining pages then, 2 through 8, break down in a little bit more detail what each of those are. So, I don't know if, I won't go through everything, but if there is something that stands out that you would like some clarification on. We did have to make a few little changes, push some things back. We are uncertain, and this was something the budget committee talked about, we're kind of uncertain as to, are we gonna have another COVID winter, spring in 2021? We don't know. How is it going to affect our second penny sales tax, which is down for 2020?
About 6,000-ish.
Oh, it's more like 30. Mhm.
Okay.
So, but I mean, we also have new businesses that started during COVID, and I went and visited the gal from Heritage, and she thought she was gonna have to keep her second job down in Vermillion, and thinking it would be super slow, and she is busy, and
Good.
she's happy. And I feel Brenda is happy. I
Very much so.
specific-
I talked to Todd, yeah, she's very,
So our new businesses are doing well so that's gonna reflect.
Yeah.
The things that hurt us is not being able to have a full fair this year, and that generates a lot of sales tax dollars for the city. Having businesses closed for so long, or operating a minimal customer base, that affected the city, so.
Cafe, the bar, all of that
Mhm.
revenue.
So,
The bread thing on Thursday morning,
mhm.
wonder how much that affects the sales tax receipts.
It could affect total staff.
It could. A lot of what we do there is to get access for the people that super need it. We had to build numbers. So it's open to everybody. I mean, and so the food pantry usually is for those that there's an imminent need.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the bread thing isn't quite that imminent. So it gets feeding South Dakota into the community, because otherwise then to buy the food so much a pound, if the food pantry does it, and I'm not even sure we can do it because of numbers. The food pantry operates solely and completely on donations.
Well, I just-
Local, the businesses have been very good to us and stuff, but, if that answers your question, a lot of it's produce. It's stuff that the food pantry can't, because of logistics, can't take care of it. The
Sort of
fruits
spoil.
and vegetables, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
On page 3, there's the radio read project in 2021. Is that a definite going ahead? And
We would like to, and technology has changed a lot, but the price still pretty much stays about the same. So, when we have a few less projects going on, I will invite the meter reading people to come back in, and we'll visit with them and actually get some hardcore numbers and quantity. But I feel that's gonna be a very good estimate, the 100,000 to get us to radio reads.
that 85 and 15, we're talking radio reading, but still, you have to physically, say, drive up, point something at it, or is it all radio? Like you've got one antenna on the water tower that picks up everybody's?
We're really blessed with how we live and where we live. I honestly think we'll be able to capture about 80%, and the rest will be just driving up and down the street to fill in the rest.
That's sweet.
So, yeah.
But there's the $200, or we're asking residents to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to come up with the 85,000.
We have to buy them in bulk, and then if a resident is willing to put out the $200 in one lump sum, great. If not, we thought we would do an $8 surcharge until it was paid off. Almost 2 years of $8 a month, so. So any questions on water or sewer or police?
I think that'll still be paid off, huh?
Yes, 2021, that'll be paid off. And I know the chief will work at getting grants, and if not grants for his equipment, he will look at possibly some hand-me-downs from bigger agencies. So. finance office. At this point, I included the community building and finance office. You'll see once we get to the budget of the golf course, it's actually, community center is built into the golf course. But initially, I had it as a separate line item under finance office.
Is the golf course, I mean, is the dirt all fully paid for, the ground?
No. But the
The real estate?
Yeah, it's all paid.
The physical